Maybe you've been doing everything right. Praying, tracking, testing, changing your diet, and you're still staring at another negative test. The weight can break you. It can make you question your body, your faith, and even God's promises. I've been there month after month of heartbreak, wondering why the door wasn't opening even after all of these miracles happened after my husband's vasectomy reversal. But honestly, what looked like delay was actually the greatest story in the making. In today's episode, I'm sharing how God met me in the waiting, healed what was broken, and wrote a miracle story, not once, but twice in my 40s, and how that journey inspired my new devotional, Faithful in the Wait, that's coming October 29th. Because no matter what the doctors say or how long it's been, your story is not over, and neither is God's goodness. Welcome to Testimony Thursday on Faith Over Pharma. These are real, raw stories of everyday people who said yes to natural healing and watched God move in amazing ways. Quick disclaimer, nothing you hear today is medical advice, a diagnosis, or even a miracle guarantee, but it might just stir your faith and blow your mind. So go grab your electrolytes and let's get into this week's story. I never thought I would be a woman in her 40s having babies, although I most definitely always wanted to be a mother my whole life. I was the teenager who spent weekends babysitting instead of doing parties, movies, and other things most of my friends were doing. I absolutely loved it when the school gave us those robotic babies to take home for the weekend. Although I definitely realized that I didn't want kids while I was still in high school, but I really could not wait to be a mom. And I guess the first person that I met after I joined the military who offered sort of that white picket fence and the opportunity to be a mom felt like an answer to prayer. I had my son at 22, which is completely wild since he's now that age. And I had my daughter 3.5 years later. And our marriage was not the picture perfect one that I had envisioned, but for many years, I felt like it was just my cross to bear. I realized that I had lost so much of myself in the emotional and verbal abuse. And I kind of came to terms that I couldn't really be the mom that I wanted if I'd stayed in the marriage. So I had no interest in dating after my divorce. And I have to admit, when I met my current husband, Daryl, it was pretty much love at first sight. The story is crazy, so I'll share a little bit here. But I was taking some pictures of a going away party for about 40 guys who were getting ready to deploy for 8 months to Iraq. And somehow the only pictures that I ended up with that day were of him. And the rest, I guess they say, is history. We had a 4-day whirlwind romance, and he was gone for 8 months. I will say that I spent a fortune on calling cards to call Iraq every day on his phone. And this was like 2008, so it was well before the iPhone. In fact, I had one of those, I forget the name of it, but it's one of those phones that you flip out and you type. So all of my emails had, lots of non-capital words. Kind of crazy to think back on that time. But I also mailed him a card every single Monday while he was gone. And when he came home, we managed our long distance relationship. He lived 100 miles away from me. And as we began to talk about our future, we basically decided that the 5 kids between us was enough. I mean, my kids were 2 and 5 at the time. His were like 9, 11, and 12. So I drove him to get a vasectomy. I mean, it seems harmless enough, right? By the way, I am going to do a deep dive on what happens health-wise when men get these so-called harmless procedures done on a future episode, but I digress. After 3 years of dating, we got married, and fast forward about 9 years into our marriage, I started to feel like I wasn't done having kids. And I kind of joke now that about the time my kids didn't need me anymore, I wanted to start over. But seriously, it was a total God thing. And both of our hearts started changing at the same time, leaning towards having a kid together. And that was kind of insane to think about, really. And I always tell my friends, like, never say never. My husband was also the guy who, when I met him, was never, ever, ever going to get married again or have any more kids. So yeah, never say never. But initially, I wanted to adopt because I kept seeing all these kids who needed parents. And my husband, the adorable and frugal man that he is, said, wouldn't it be cheaper if we had one of our own? I didn't even know that a vasectomy reversal was a thing at that time. So of course, being the researcher that I am, I took to the Google and found this incredible doctor in Tucson who is world renowned for vasectomy reversals. I mean, people come from all over. He's written textbooks. He's developed instruments that are used in procedures. Like, he's the guy. And when I went to his website, it was like choirs of angels were singing hallelujah. And I just burst into tears, like knowing this was the guy. And at the time, my husband was deployed again. And so I'm telling him about this amazing guy. And he was also pursuing becoming a firefighter. At the time, he was a police officer. And for 15 years, he had wanted to become a firefighter. And it's just like the stars never aligned for it. Keep in mind, at this time, we are still living 100 miles apart. And so I'm single parenting, driving up anytime I can, managing 2 households, all the things. So he comes back, and from his deployment, we have a consult with Dr. Marks in Tucson, Arizona. If you need a great doctor, I highly, highly recommend dadsagain.com. But on the website, there was a guy, a firefighter, holding a baby. And when I saw that, I don't know what it was about that. It had to have been a God thing. But I totally knew this was where we needed to go. This was the guy. So when my husband got home, we booked a call. This was in, again, 2018, I guess, and 17 maybe. And so we have this call, and he's the guy. We decide that, but he's got a really long wait list. So we kind of just left it at that. And so a few days later, we're leaving our tax guy's office, and we get a call from Dr. Mark's office, and he says, hey, we have an opening in 10 days. Do you guys want it? And we're like, wow, what an incredible opportunity. I mean, we most definitely need to take advantage of this, but gosh, how much is that going to cost? And would you believe that the amount that they told us was the exact amount that we had just found out from our tax guy that we were getting back on a refund? Which, by the way, we hadn't gotten a refund back in like 2 years. I don't even know how that happened. So we booked it. We're like, yes, obviously this is a God thing. Like, we have to go there. So he has the procedure done 10 days later. He's going through the process of becoming a firefighter. And because he sounded too much like a cop, They paired him up with somebody in the Phoenix Fire Department to mentor him on interview prep, who was a former cop turned firefighter. And they got to talking about vasectomy reversals. And the guy says, "Oh, did you go down to Tucson? My picture is on their website with our baby." Shut the front door. You mean to tell me that in all of the people he got paired up with, the guy whose photo made me cry and knew that this was a doctor was the guy to help my husband get hired at the fire department? Which, by the way, he did get hired, and the rest is history. But all of these things happen so incredibly miraculously. Now, I'm 38 at this time, and I think, oh, I'm going to get pregnant right away. This is going to happen. It's going to be amazing. And a month goes by and nothing. And Dr. Marks is of the opinion to have analysis done every 4 weeks so that you can catch any kind of inflammation early on, which now as a practitioner, I wholeheartedly agree with that, just because it's easier than waiting. Anyhow, at the 4-week mark, it was like, yeah, you got a bunch of junky sperm. That's fine. But it's open. The procedure worked. Go back in 4 more weeks. So at our 8-week appointment, he has an analysis done, and the number is 0. Zip, 0, zilch. And I was crushed. Here I am. The Lord has worked these miracles out for us to get this done, and now it's 0. Call up Dr. Mark's office. He tells us the bad news, and he doesn't seem concerned. He says, oh, we need to do a round of anti-inflammatories, steroids, and continue icing, do all of these other protocols, test in 4 more weeks. So we do. And at 12 weeks, the numbers were like 131 million. It was insane. And so, yes, we followed all of that. And I thought, oh, well, here we go. The Lord's going to make it happen. Another month goes by, another month goes by, another month goes by, and still nothing. I'm heartbroken because here I am inching closer and closer to 40. And the world likes to tell you that when you're that age, that you're too old. And I really gave in to that fear. And then I found out that I was going to have to deploy to the Middle East for 6 months. And I went back and forth on this because I was like, well, if I get pregnant, then it's fine. No problem. I won't go. And I really felt like the Lord was telling me that I needed to go on the deployment. And I was furious because why would you take me down this path only to make me wait? Like, everything was so incredibly easy and flawless and amazing. And now you're telling me to wait? I actually had a positive pregnancy test in July. So his surgery was in March. I had a positive test in July. And I'm over the moon. Like, I think I was going to California at the time. And I just was like imagining this new life. This is the baby. And on my birthday, I started bleeding. And I was devastated, to say the least. I go and have some blood work done, and they say, you weren't ever, like, there's no sign that you were actually pregnant. You must have just gotten a faulty test. But that faulty test caused me to really stop and think about what God's plans were. Like, I really felt in my heart of hearts, he wanted me to deploy. But why would he want me to deploy and be away from my kids, my husband? Meanwhile, he got hired by the fire department. I was going to miss his graduation. And to add salt to the wounds, my stepdad, who raised me, basically, from the time I was in the 4th grade, unexpectedly passed away. I walked into the room while they were working on him, and he coded. And then my grandfather passed away. So one of them, my stepdad's funeral was on Friday. My grandfather's was on Saturday. And I left for my deployment on Sunday. And I'm kind of skipping ahead here, but I felt called to go on this deployment, and I was so mad about it. I did not want to go. It was the absolute last thing I ever wanted to do. And I sat in my kitchen crying out to the Lord in absolute anger. Why would you lead me on this path that was so easy, so simple, so wonderful? Why would you do all of that only to tell me to wait? Why would you tell me that this was my plan for you and then wait? So in absolute anger, with I don't think I've ever been so mad in my whole life, I cried out to the Lord, why? Why would you take me on this journey and tell me to wait? And I audibly heard the Lord as if he was standing in my kitchen with me. And this has been years ago. And it still makes me so emotional to think about hearing from God, his kind and loving voice, when I was so angry. He met me with love and compassion, and he asked me, "Do you not trust me? Look at all I have done." And he was right. When I sat and thought about all of the miraculous things that he had done, he was right. And so I chose to put off my own wanting a baby, my own plans, my own timeline. And I really, with every inch of my being that I did not want to do, took a leap of faith. I went on the deployment. I missed going to my grandfather's funeral because I went to one funeral on Friday. The next was on Saturday, and I couldn't make it because I had to leave on Sunday. And I left everyone that I loved. I went on this deployment to the Middle East, and I chose very intentionally, although not easy, and certainly not what I was wanting to do, but I chose intentionally to make the most of whatever God had planned for me while I was there. And I didn't know what it was. I had no idea. I just kept clinging to Jeremiah 29:11, that his plans were to prosper me, that his plans were better than anything I could ever ask or imagine. And I just had to trust that that was the case. So I go on this deployment. It's not like every day was so hard. It was the hardest year of my life. Not only was I grieving the loss of 2 men who meant the world to me, it also brought up a lot of trauma from my dad's suicide when I was 14, that as a 14-year-old girl, I just never dealt with. So I was grieving him all over again as a now almost 39-year-old woman, and grieving being away from my kids, missing my husband's things, some trips that I had earned through my business. And I was just like, I don't know what this is, but I'm going to make the most of it. I'm going to be positive. I'm going to be thankful. That's really when I started my gratitude practice. And I will tell you, if it's not something that you're doing now, it will change your life. And while it was so hard, I really, really focused on the foundations of my own health. I had spent so many years, especially when I was in a verbally and emotionally abusive marriage, giving to everyone else, putting my own health and my own feelings on the back burner. And so I really used this time to get really consistent with my workouts. I dialed in my nutrition, fixed a lot of the gut health issues that I had because I had been on this practice of coaching and learning about nutrition for about, 4 years at this time. I actually started the habit of setting an alarm on my phone that reminds me to go to bed, which I still have to this day. I sorted through trauma. I sorted through even my own, trust issues with the Lord, because my earthly father abandoned me, and I had a lot of issues of abandonment because of that. I sorted through all of that and really started to see how God sees me and how much I was loved. And I will tell you that while that year, I'm going to tear up again. While that year was the hardest year of my life, I wouldn't trade it for anything. And so if you're listening to this story and you're in the wait, your prayers are not being answered on your timeline, you're feeling like the Lord led you astray and left you, or the devil's trying to get in your head and make you doubt and question God's goodness and plans for your life, I want to tell you this. God is so good, and you are so loved. And while I didn't know it at the time of all of this, and it was revealed to me much later. Obviously, hindsight's always 20/20, right? But I am so grateful for being very intentional of focusing on those health foundations, for sorting through trauma, for just becoming a stronger and better version of myself. And I will say that on Monday's episode, if you didn't catch that with Kate about miscarriage, one of the things that she talked about was if you're carrying around a basket full of garbage, emotional garbage, trauma garbage, if you never empty it, you will never be filled by God, what he has for you, his love, his plans, his abundance, all of the things. And that's so, so true. And it took me hitting rock bottom to hear the most clear from the Lord and to really work through the things that I just had never been quiet or still or willing to process. So I go on my deployment. I am very intentional about taking care of myself. My husband and I actually, in that process, met up in Germany. I got sent there for a week. He rearranged his entire schedule and flew over and hung out with me. And I guess was like, oh, the timing is perfect. I'm going to get pregnant and I've only got a couple months left. No one will have to know. It's going to be amazing. And I didn't get pregnant on that trip. And as I traveled home, and if you've never been in the Middle East in the summer, it was literally weather-wise the worst place I've ever been in my entire life. It was like 122 degrees and about 93% humidity. Literally awful. And our flight got delayed coming home. We sat on the hot tarmac in Kuwait trying to go home. It was terrible. And in that moment, I couldn't help but being so thankful that God had not answered my prayers, because being in my first trimester, making that trip home would have been the worst. But I came home, thought, okay, this is it. I'm going to get pregnant. It's going to be amazing. Here we go. Month by month by month goes by. It doesn't happen. We get into the start of 2020, the year I turned 40. And I started thinking, well, I'm getting old. Of course, the doctors are saying that. I have some lab work done at a fertility clinic. My husband had his semen retested. Everything was astronomical and amazing. So clearly it was my problem that we weren't getting pregnant. But no, everything looks normal. You just need to do IUI or IVF because you're old. It's essentially what I was told. So I wanted a baby yesterday. I start going through the process of doing IUI. My husband was deployed. He was going to make it back just in time. They gave me some meds that were going to help stimulate my follicle count, and it was going to be amazing. We're going to do IUI, and he misses the window. I take the meds. They make me incredibly sick. So another month, another disappointment. We go on to the next month. Take the meds again. I'm really sick. Like, this is awful. The IUI, it fails. And I got to having the same feeling that I did about when God spoke to me and told me to trust him. And I thought, why are we trying to play God in all of this? Keep in mind, I had had a vaccine injury right before my deployment. I didn't think I was ever going to get my health back. Thankfully, the Lord completely healed and restored me. I did a metals detox, which made a night and day difference after months and months of suffering. But I've been on this kick of realizing God didn't make a mistake when he created our bodies. And here I am taking all of these meds after I kind of gone down the rabbit hole about ingredients of things and realizing that just was not his intention for me. Side note, I wholeheartedly believe that a big piece of that puzzle of why I was being sent on that deployment is so that I would have that vaccine adverse reaction, so that I would be healed and then be equipped to battle it out when the COVID vaccine came around, because I did battle it out. Anyway, I digress. I decided in talking to my husband that we were done playing God in all of this, because he had been so faithful in all of the process of the time off of work for him, the paying for the procedure, all of these things were completely and totally miraculous. And why was I not willing to trust him, even though I was turning 40 soon? And so we made a decision. We weren't going to go back to the fertility clinic. We were just going to let go and let God. This was in March of 2020. And you know what happened in March of 2020. As the world started shutting down, we get a call from the fertility clinic and they say, hey, we're not seeing client or patients right now because of clinics are shut down because of COVID. And we're like, good, we weren't going to come see you anyway. And the next month, in April, I had a dream about a baby girl. And I knew I needed to take a pregnancy test, so I did. And it was positive. When the world was shutting down, I got the answer to 2 years of prayer. And I will tell you that the vision that I had pled to God of what I wanted my little girl, my blonde-haired little girl. In fact, I had a book made for her before she was born. And the picture that I drew in this book, I didn't draw it, but had it made. She looks exactly my vision. And so I guess, as they say, the rest is history. I had a baby at 40 at the end of COVID in 2020. And she was the greatest gift. And side note, my husband and I, okay, we've got 5 kids. Naming kids is a really big thing. And neither of us liked anything that the other was recommending. We could not agree on names. And one of my friends said, the Lord knows her name. Just ask him. And out of nowhere, I got the name Emma. And it's funny because my husband got that same thing. And when I sent it to him and what it means, he was like, yes. Emma means my God has answered. And she certainly was the answer to many, many prayers. She truly completed me. She healed parts of my inner child. She helped me see myself in the way that the Lord sees me. And I am forever grateful for those 2 years where I was very intentional about making myself the best version of myself for her. And you fast forward, everyone probably knows that I have another little boy now that I never expected or intended on having. In fact, it was sort of a joke when I found out I was pregnant that I was good. Emma completed me. I was content. I didn't need any more. I mean, that was 6 kids. We're good, right? And my husband was kind of like, well, let's just leave it to the Lord and see what he has plans. Now, I literally thought that I was going into perimenopause. I was doing a bunch of experimentation on my hormones and changing up my workouts and doing some things. And I missed my period. And I thought, well, this is it. I'm going into menopause. And I'm telling him this. And he's like, no, you're not that old. You're not old enough for that. I'm like, I am though. And I thought, well, I just better take a test just to be sure. And it turned out positive. And I was like, oh no. And I've talked about this on podcasts before, but I'll just mention it here because it's kind of part of this whole story and trusting the Lord. But I was kind of angry. Like, I was getting ready to retire from the military. I had my annual women's retreat in Costa Rica I was getting ready for. I mean, this was not part of my plan. Emma completed me. I did not need another baby to, feel complete anymore. And then I go to Costa Rica, and as I'm taking off at the airport, I call a new OB and make an appointment for when I get back. I go to the appointment, and I'm like, by this time, I'm very excited. I'm at 9 weeks. I've been dreaming of this baby, like literally dreaming of this fat little girl baby that somebody was giving me in the dream. And they said, no, this is yours. And I was like so surprised by it in the dream. And I'm excited. I'm imagining my life, having another little girl and how amazing it's going to be. And I go to the appointment, and we go through all the, talk of how things are going to be, standard of care. It's different, more holistic minded. I've not gone that route with the other 3 kids. I've had them in hospitals, and they were all 3 C-sections. And so this was going to be a completely different experience. And she turns the ultrasound machine on, and she says, I'm not sure you're as far along as you think you are. I'm not detecting a heartbeat, and it's only measuring 5 weeks. And in that moment, I knew it was over. I drove to the fire station to tell Daryl, and I was so angry with the Lord again. Why would you give me this gift only to take it away? Why would you put me through all of this? I was just so mad because I'd gone from, I don't know about this, to like being over the moon excited. And the Lord said to me in my car, I know, I lost my son too. And in that moment, all I felt again was love. He knew. He met me right there, and he knew. And while it still stings, I was so comforted. But that got me to thinking about life. I had this baby coming, and the baby was due in November, and I was like, I can't keep working crazy hours like I am. I want to homeschool Emma anyways, so I'm going to quit my job. I'd made up my mind to quit my job. And then I found out I was pregnant 3 months later. Actually, I think it was like the last week I was working, I got pregnant again. And that whole pregnancy, the whole first part of it, I was just met with fear and doubt and all the what ifs, because I didn't know if I could handle another loss. And the Lord met me again in the shower and revealed to me that the due date of this baby, who we call Gizmo, was the same day I had miscarried the other baby. And I knew everything was going to be okay. And anytime the devil tried to seep into my mind and take over and put that fear, those doubts in my head, I just had to remember, God is good. He's so good. And I am so loved. And his timing is always, always better than my own. And sure enough, I have my little Ezra. Again, we call him Gizmo because that's what Emma started calling him that when we found out it was a little boy, which I was surprised about because I thought for sure it was a girl. Although I had a dream there was 4 of us. It was Emma and a little boy in the dream. And I was so dumbfounded at the time because I was like, we're not having any more kids. Why is there a little boy in my dream? So when the technician told me, even though I thought for sure it was going to be a girl, like I was 1,000% convinced, she said, "You're having a boy." I was like, I have dreamed about this little boy. And I don't know why I was surprised that it was a boy, but there he was. And we didn't want to tell people his name until after he was born. And so Emma started calling him Gizmo. And now he is 6 months old. And we all still call him Gizmo because we started calling him that. Gosh, it's been a year ago now. And I keep thinking, like, when are any answers to it? If you say Giz or Gizmo, he turns around and looks at you. So I'm like, am I doing this child a disservice by calling him Gizmo? I don't know. We'll see. But it's funny. Most people call him that too. Anyways, he is an absolute gift that I didn't know I needed. And all of this whole story, I hope that if you are listening and you're waiting for your miracle, you're doubting if the Lord is hearing your prayers, you're doubting his plans, maybe you went down this path and thought, yeah, this is it, I'm going to do it. And each month that it doesn't go that way, you start questioning, did I get that wrong? Should I just give up? The devil loves nothing more than to make you question what God's plans are for you or his love for you. He would love nothing more than a family to not have more babies who love the Lord. I want to tell you this. His plans are always good. He loves you so much, and do not allow the devil, whose only power is his little whispers in your ear to make you doubt or question. Don't let the devil win. Don't feel like you can't wait for your baby, that you can't do what you need to do foundationally, health-wise, because if I look back, there was a lot I needed to do to prepare me to be the mom I wanted to be for my future children. And so I say all of this just to encourage you that if you're in the wait, get my devotion that's coming out October 29th, shameless plug. I poured my heart and soul, everything about that book I did myself, and from laying it out and all of the things. But it truly, truly was born out of the hardest, most wonderful season of my life. And I pray it blesses you as well. Because I can't imagine looking at either of our little miracles and thinking that I wish I had given up, or that's probably not the way I meant it to say, but you know what I mean? I can't imagine looking into their faces and thinking oh, I don't know if I can do this. Because it is hard in the wait. It is hard to have loss. So hard. But again, I wouldn't trade those hard seasons and the lessons learned and the person I became for anything. So I want to ask you this. If you're in a season of waiting, if you're in a season of doubt, if you're in a season of being angry at God, tell him. Let him have it. I promise he can take it. But also ask yourself, what can I glean from this season? How can I be intentional and utilizing this season to be the best version of me for the kids I so desperately want to have? And I promise you, nobody's perfect. So there are things that you could work on that you've probably been putting off or you haven't been prioritizing. You've swept some trauma under the rug. Girl, I get it. I did the same thing. But use the wait to be very intentional. And if you get closer to the Lord, I promise you, it's so worth it. I will tell you that I have heard from him the most clearly and the most loudly in the worst times of my life. And I encourage you to use that time, because I promise you, you'll look back on it with zero regret if you are intentional. So I really hope that this has sparked something in you to take action, to be the person your future kids are thankful for. I will say that because of my healthy foundations, and I talk about this on the podcast all the time, because of the healthy foundations that I put in place, my kids have a completely different mom, but their lives are completely different. They know that being active and eating healthy foods, that's just part of who they are. They don't have to unlearn some of those bad habits. In fact, Emma is 4 and she eats better than a lot of adults that I know as far as her palate and selection. She does not eat typical toddler food, never has. She will ask for sushi on the daily. And I'm very grateful that I put forth those foundations that made her life that much more rich. So I encourage you to ask the hard questions. And again, if you get my book on Amazon, Faithful in the Wait, I'll make sure it's in the show notes. There are a lot of journaling prompts that will help you process through a lot of this. And I guarantee you'll come out of the 30 days of that a completely different person. And I would love and be so honored to hear from you if that's the case. So I pray that this blesses you, and know that I am believing for you and your baby that you want, and that his plans for you are greater than you could ever ask or imagine. Thanks for listening to Testimony Thursday on Faith Over Pharma. If that story stirred something in you, share it with a friend who's ready to believe that miracles still happen. Got a story of your own? Head over to faithoverpharma.org. I'd love to hear it. And if this podcast is helping you see things differently, leaving a quick review helps us reach more people who are done with Band-Aids and hungry for truth. Until next time, keep questioning the narrative, protecting your peace, and walking in the truth that your body was made to heal.